So this morning I saw one of those things on social media where it's like, this was 1 year ago. You know, I saw myself and I was like, whoa, oh, that's cool. Oh, I forgot I did this thing like a year ago for like a week where I just kind of like took my like morning break right around this time, usually around like 11 o'clock. And just like heated up my coffee and like took a moment to like share some time with people in a digital form. It was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was just starting to explore like, to ask questions about like, what do we do during this time? How is it different? What's happening to me? What does it make me think? A year later, I don't know if I feel much differently about it all. It's like, as far as the news is concerned, as far as media is concerned, as far as everything's concerned, a lot has happened. A lot of us are getting vaccines. A lot of us are now wearing masks. But I don't know that I feel much differently about it. So I just wanted to kind of celebrate a year after seeing that video to just come do it again. A few weeks back, I started messing with this tool called StreamYard, which lets me stream to YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. I don't know if you all have heard of Twitch, but it's got a huge gaming community of people who stream themselves playing video games. It's hugely popular. Even though it's so popular, I talk to people every day about it and they have no idea what it is. But one of the things that I was thinking about this morning was, as I was watching this video of me a year ago talk about stuff, I mean, a lot of my thoughts and energy and questions are kind of the same. And I didn't really like that. I didn't really like that. Like, for me, a year seems like a long time. Like, if I was going to tell you you're going to do something for a year, you would be like, well, that's a long time, man. And if I was to say, all right, so I want you to ask this question for a year, it seems, I don't know, that seems kind of like
which lets me
something that you wouldn't want to do,
YouTube.
And right now, I think that what it brings up into me is this idea, like, I want to stop that. I don't want to be asking a question for a year. I feel like I kind of want to get to the point, get to the meat, But is that just me like being impatient or a perfectionist or whatever? Is it totally okay to ask questions for a year? One of the cool things about StreamYard is if someone comments on the Facebook video or on the YouTube video or the Twitch video, I can get it right here in this little platform, which is pretty cool. So if you guys want to like jump on here, I also can send an invitation, which is cool. I can invite you to come on here with me.
Twitch.
And the only problem is, like, right now I'm like trying to do that and it's like,
it's got a huge gaming community.
I just gotta close it. Go away. So yeah, so the idea that what kind of prompted me to do this today was to really ask myself, like, what was I looking for when I started to do these coffee segments, coffee videos? And I've still been streaming every once in a while. And often it's spurred by a question. It's spurred by a question that I have that I don't know the answer to. And I know some people who might know the answers. I know people in communities and in industries. I know someone who works in a hospital. I think I'll ask them, right? And I just find that really fascinating. What if I really have started to think over the years that a question, you being able or me being able to ask a question, it's like if it's asked, it's almost like it has to be answered because, for our brains to evolve, for our language to evolve, for our minds to develop, for our limited understanding of the world to all of those things to come together for you to be able to go, huh, what about that? I feel like that means you have to go find the answer to that wonder or that question because it's like you're leading in a certain direction. And to say, I wonder about that. And then shrug. I don't know. Let me keep doing what I was doing. It's like saying no. It's like saying no to opportunities or possibility or, maybe some people might think about things like fate or destiny. I don't really see it like that. I see it more like opportunities. In a video game, let's think of a video game, for example. And you are the frog, basic video game. You're the frog and the logs are coming by or whatever comes by in that game. And you're jumping from log to log. If you miss a log, another log's going to come, right? And if you say no to this log and no to that log and no to that log, eventually the end of the line is going to come and you're going to fall off the current log. So it's like you have a limited time to jump to the next log. And so I just feel like another log, another question will come up for you. And it's another opportunity for you to say yes, to seek the answers to it. And for me, that's where coming on here and doing this was inspired is I'm not hanging out with people. I'm not going out to lunch and talking, grabbing a coffee and being what have you been up to? What have you been thinking about? And I'm not sure how to use this to do that because no one has commented yet, which means I can't invite anybody. So it's really just me talking to myself. But that's good too. It's like Mr. Rogers, just sharing my curiosities and wonders about things. One of the ideas that I often have is about shows or videos or films or podcasts. I've never made a podcast. I did some internet radio in college, but talked a lot about podcasts and never made one. And I think it's because this idea of a series is a little bit daunting for me, having to commit to this series and where it will take me. It seems not for me, but I try to ask myself if that could be possible. One of the thoughts that comes up for me a lot is just overwhelm, how people get overwhelmed by all the stuff they have to do in a day and how they're going to make enough money to pay their bills or pay down their debt. And then also the things that they want to do, right? And those things are almost very, very, very commonly just fighting each other. The things people want to do and the things they feel they have to do. And there was this obituary I read years ago from an actor. You'd know his face. I can't remember his name, but he was writing his own obituary or a eulogy, one of those things. And in it, he decided that he wanted to talk about his parents. And there was something really profound that happened. He asked the question, if I was to speak of my parents, I'm going to write my obituary or my eulogy. And in it, I'm going to talk about what my parents taught me. If you were to ask me, like, hey, did your parents teach you anything? There would be this, like, really bad, hard moment for me where I'd be like, yes. I mean, there's so many, right? Like, you just bounce around and bounce around and bounce around. But in his eulogy, he simplified it for himself. He said, you know, I couldn't tell you what my parents taught me. I know they did. So I decided in my eulogy to say, what is one thing? What's one thing my mother taught me? One thing my father taught me? And through that exercise, I felt really, like, grateful that he wrote that, because, like, that question I can answer easily. And that question made me feel good, and it didn't feel hard, and I didn't feel guilty for not being able to answer the question. To answer one, I could do. Now, one doesn't seem like a lot, but once he shrunk down the parameters to one question, one answer, it seems so much easier. Oh, I can do that. And then once you did it, you're like, oh, this is great. It's so true. And so I was thinking, like, what a cool, like, exercise. You know, public school doesn't usually do that. I mean, anything, really. We always kind of break it down into three, or break it down into the top of different categories. You know, like thinking of in school when you're studying literature and you want to write out, you know, the lessons of the book or the morality of the book. Often you feel like, well, what are all the morals? What are all the images? You want to be thorough. And if you can't be thorough, well, then maybe I'm overwhelmed and I shouldn't do it. And so I was just like wondering, like, how fun would it be, or how valuable would it be to do a series? You know, it doesn't have to be a continual series, just a start. That's me speaking to myself. And talking to people about one thing, whether it's, you know, and getting to that one thing. What's the one thing? So let's think, for example, reading a book. You know, if you just read a book and I haven't read it and I'm asking you about it, I mean, a lot of people might be like, I mean, don't sit here and tell me about the whole book. I don't want to hear that, you know. I want to read the book maybe, or I don't have time, right? Or I can't remember. But if I was to ask you, tell me the one thing after reading that book that you're like, this was the thing. This was the thing that stuck with me, or the thing that inspired me, or the thing that was remarkable, rememberable, or the best thing, or the coolest thing, or the most suspenseful thing, like the one thing in that book. That would seem a lot more possible. And earlier this week, I had lunch with the president of NatureServe. And NatureServe is an organization that's dedicated to data around biodiversity and ecological systems and species. They sort of act as a hub for a lot of different ecological organizations around the world. And the president was going on a tour of these different data collection systems around the country. You know, this community and ecological system in North Carolina, New York, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. Each of these states has different programs that are focused on different species and different ecosystems. And one of the things that he asked on a podcast recently that he said it really inspired him and has been inspiring him to ask other people this question is, in your work, in your life's work, if you could say, you know, at the end of your life, at the end of your career, if you could get one thing, if you could have like one thing that happened what would that thing be that would make you feel proud of yourself or proud of your work or that it was worth it? And he said that the answers that people have been giving him are really profound and really inspiring. One of the biodiversity scientists that he interviewed said, if my work could lead to just one species not going extinct, then my life would have been worth it. Just one species. Now that maybe just someone who doesn't know what it takes to keep a species from extinction might seem like, one species? I mean, there's a lot of species going extinct, man. Like, maybe we should work harder. But he was saying that, like, it could easily be none. Like, I could spend my whole career talking about the importance of biodiversity, and it could mean nothing. So if one species doesn't go extinct because of my work, that feels really good. I met a lot of teachers that say the same thing. Like, if one of their students that they taught goes to do one great thing, it makes them feel really good. Because that's like, in the end, if you were lost or feeling doubt about your path, and you like look back, that would be something you could hold on to, something that you could attach yourself to and feel good about your work and about your life. So yeah, that was from a year ago, kind of like thinking about like if I was to start a podcast or a video, I don't think it would be Coffee with Derek. But I like this idea of just one thing, because I think it can apply to a lot of different conversations, a lot of different life experiences. If you were to watch a movie or a TV series and you were to say, well, what's one thing that stood out to you, or one thing that you remember, or one thing that, what I mean is one thing that changed you, stuck with you, like if you saw something and it didn't change you at all, it's like, what was the point? Like I have trouble falling asleep unless I watch something. And so I watched something. I don't remember what it was, but now I'm sleeping. Thank you, media. So it's definitely more about like being engaged and really listening and thinking. So one thing that made you think, or one question that you had at the end of it all, whatever that is. One of the questions that comes up for me a lot is about waste. Like, I'm always looking at waste and thinking, there's got to be a better way. And over the last few weeks, I've had a lot of conversations with people about caring, like whether or not people care about waste, or it's often called sustainability or green. But I mean, it's funny now, it's like every product that you can buy has the word eco or earth or green or something on it, to try and help us with our guilt, to try and get us to buy that one over the other one, because we do care, and it's a shame that like our caring gets used as a marketing method to sell more things that we might not care about, but because it says those words on it, because we care, that's why it works. That's why the marketing methods work. So when my brother asked me recently, like, why I care about waste, What does it matter in the end whether there's a bunch of plastic in the ocean or not? And I appreciate the question. It's not that he doesn't care. It's just that he feels like it's a valuable thing to ask me. Like, we can get caught up in our stuff. We can get caught up in our own paths and our own missions and our own egos and our own trajectories, you could call it, And if you were to ask, like someone who like just became the president, like, so why do you want to be the president again? Like, in the middle of it, after an election, that a person who just became president might not be able to answer that question, because it's like so hard and stressful, and everyone's got something to say and everyone wants something different. But I still think it's a good question to ask, no matter what, along your journey. Why do I care? And for me, like, a lot of times it comes down to, I always say design, because like, that's how I see everything as a designer. But like, really what I mean is it makes sense. Like, if I was to logically like look at my behavior and just be like, oh, that was a waste. Why keep doing that? If I identify something as like a waste of time, I probably would stop doing it. So that's why I think, like, consumer waste bothers me in the same way. Like, it seems like a waste of time, or a waste of life, or a waste of energy, or a waste of money, or a waste of resources. And I've been kind of working on that question a long time about waste. And I think it's a friend of mine, Jana, recently said that she cares about waste because if you look at the natural world and you study it and you look in the details, there isn't waste. It all kind of works together like a system or a cycle. And whenever I talk about it, it always comes up some kind of reference to the past, like, oh yeah, well, my grandmother used to do this, or I used to do that growing up, or the indigenous peoples of this country or that country used to do it this way, and then it was like, but, and now we don't. Progress, right? Can't be. Not if we're looking back as in reverence. And a good way to have a heated conversation with someone is to compare their trajectory and then show reverence for the past, because what it means is, and this is why it gets sketchy, it gets touchy, gets emotional, is because to show reverence for the past is to talk about or make the person think that they've wasted their time, they've wasted their energy, and that no one wants that. We want, our lives are finite. We are mortal, and therefore we are like, I want my time to matter. I don't want to waste it. So yeah, I think it's deep. It's a deep reason for me caring about waste, because I think for me, if something could be done in a way that makes sense and is better and results in less suffering, and then someone's like, but we can't do that because, that always really just seems like, I don't know, like so crazy. Like, we have people who go on the news and are talking about sending people to Mars, right? Like think about 100 years ago when someone was not wasting, reusing, and go like, well, we might go to Mars, and they're like, stop reading in your science fiction books or whatever, or get out of your imagination or your head, but now it's a reality. And then still there are these things that we could do better that we don't. And I really have no patience for it. It's like when it's almost like imagining like my dad asking me a question about my behavior, being like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't want to say. So yeah, I think that would be cool. I think it would be a cool project to just think about, to be the one who asked people, no. Just give me one. Are you going to write a book about your life? No, I mean, whoa, that sounds like a lot of work. Not going to do it. Not going to write a book about my life. Sounds like a lot. I don't know how to write. I've never written a book. All those things, right? But that means the story doesn't get told. So if I was to say, but just give me one. Just one thing from your life. That'll be the book. It's your book. Your book is just the one thing. 144 characters. Go. So, but it does need the parameters, right? Look, if I was to ask you right now. So just comment, just comment on here. Give me one thing, right? It'd be like, one thing about what? So it does need the context of like, what thing are you talking about? Is it a book? Is it a movie? Is it an experience? Was it your day yesterday? I'm seeing some comments here on Facebook that aren't showing up on StreamYard. My friend Amanda said that her and Ryan, we used to answer this question by saying, if one family buys one less cart of monocropped grown Walmart food, we succeeded. Yeah, my brother just noticed that I'm not seeing the comments. I was not seeing the comments. It's true. So yeah, I don't know if what I need to do to see the comments. If I need to click on that, or maybe, you know what it might be, if I'm streaming to multiple platforms, I can't see the comments, but I'm like, this is some destinations won't get comments. So I don't know why that is. It says YouTube, Twitch, Facebook should all work, but it's not working. It's a bummer. I'll have to look into that, why that happened. Well, if you see this and you watch to the end, I would really appreciate it if you could give me one thing, what would be the one thing? Let's go with Sean's question, right? Considering your work, considering your maybe parenting, or considering your life's work. I like life's work. That sounds good. Considering your life's work at the end, what would the one thing that you would feel successful if it happened? What would be the one thing you would hope to have changed or to left behind? What would that one thing be? I'll take time to answer that question right now, because it seems bigger than the movie or the book or it seems bigger in that way. And it's always going to change, but I think that's okay. It's not really an answer to say, well, it's always going to change. It's, well, what is it now, right? What's the one thing now? I have to say, for a long time, for many, many years, 15 years maybe at this point, maybe less, 10 years. The one thing that I've always felt I just wish I could do. Like, I wish if like I died and they were reading books about me or movies about me and they were like, Derek did this. Derek was the one that helped bring this change. And it doesn't have to be solely me. It just has I would be attached to it. If I could be involved in helping the world move beyond money. Money is a tool. I think in a lot of situations, money really does help people cooperate, and it helps people get what they need. But if you know the history of money, and especially the history of money in our country, there's a letter. There's a letter that's referred to that George Washington wrote. And whenever I think about money, I always think about this letter. It was during early America when we were moving west, and there was a lot of lack of control, a lot of kind of chaos involved in the interrelationships between the Europeans who were now here and establishing a life in America and the indigenous people. And when they started to move west from the east coast of the United States, there was a lot of conflict. And at the time, the government, the bodies, the governing body, because it wasn't really a government yet, they asked George Washington to help because he was so crucial in helping during the Revolutionary War that they thought everyone would listen to him. Let's get George Washington to help with these conflicts. And the conflict was actually, the government not being able to establish control because people were creating agreements and building communities and bonds between themselves and the indigenous people. So there was all this exchange of property and trading and stuff going on in not under the government's sort of like system. And so they wanted to establish control, but they also wanted peace because there was a lot of conflict. There was a lot of violent conflict. And in this letter, George Washington wrote, "You won't have to pick up one gun. You won't have to pick up one weapon in our conflict in growth across this land to the other coast with the indigenous peoples. All you have to do is get them on money. If you get them on money, eventually they will depend on it, and then we'll do whatever you want." And that story changed me because I could see the deliberate use of starting the tool, starting the system with the plan of subduing, with the plan of taking control. And because of its ability to do that, I have a problem with it. And I hope, I see visions on television shows like Star Trek. I'm sure there are more, but the one that I often talk about is Star Trek and Star Trek Next Generation. They talk about how money is no longer a thing because people work together to meet everyone's needs. That's just what they do. Our collective struggle is a growing population and a finite planet of resources. To fight over that is to not be invested in your own survival. And so I think there's a better way. I don't think it's utopian. I think it's logical. My belief my belief and hope that, at least for a long time, it's the one that came to mind about wanting to be involved in a future that helped people beyond money. It's just logical in how the path of least resistance works in our minds, in our energy. I mean, science has even, discovered that like the existence of life, the birth of life itself came from path of least resistance, energy's path of least resistance. And if you give me, a simple example is if you give me a car to go around the city and a bike to go around the city, right? I'm going to choose the car if I have money to pay for gas. If I don't have money to pay for gas, I'm going to choose the bike. It's easy. It's easy to just follow the path of least resistance in that situation. Now I'd be like, oh, but if you had discipline over your own mind and you wanted to do something that didn't involve fossil fuels and got you exercise, you would choose the bike. But we are not equipped. We are not equipped to make that decision on a regular basis. Maybe if we're just seeking exercise. But if it was a daily commute, to watch the car sit there and choose the bike, I am not sure that we are equipped to make those decisions. I think what we normally say is, but imagine the good I could do with the money, right? Here's the thing. Here's the choice. Do this thing and you believe it's better. You believe it's better for the people you know, for your family, for your health. It's just better to do this thing. But this thing would get you more money. We are not equipped to not choose that thing. We will choose the thing with more money because it's the path of least resistance to get the thing that we want in our minds. And I think there's a flaw. There's a core flaw there in just what's best for us. And if, it's like addiction or, maybe money is an addiction. It would be interesting to see that if just getting addicted to the power that comes with a little bit of money versus, the work that would take to do all those things that we could use the money for. So I think that would be my one thing. Now, what am I doing? What things am I doing currently right now to help that come to fruition? Basically nothing. So that's a kind of like a cool thought to guide you, to make you think about what you're doing. Like maybe I should be doing something because I listed it as my one thing. So before I hop off here, it would be awesome if you could comment on this video what your one thing is. And if you have ideas, maybe if you have ideas about other questions like that, one things, totally share them with me. All right. My coffee is gone. Signing off. I'll see you in a year, right?